اللهم صل على محمد صلى الله عليه صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. أما بعد، قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: وما إنما خلقتم للبقاء لا للفناء. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers and sisters, once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yesterday we briefly touched about the divine system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in this world, and that is the system of imamah. And that's a system that governs mankind. It started with prophethood, it goes into the imamat, as we discussed. Now today what I want to discuss is how can we follow the system, and if we do follow the system, then where does it take us? And I remember one of my teachers, he used to talk to me like this. He says there is a circle of life. And it was really funny because he used to say to the students, he says, mashallah, you're born, inshallah you have a long life, inshallah you have a healthy life, and then inshallah you'll die. So then we used to be like, yeah. And then he's like, why don't you say inshallah you'll die? You say inshallah you have a long life, but you don't say inshallah you'll die. He says, you want to stay here forever? He says, no. So then it's the mindset that we have. And that he was trying to change our mindset. He says, death is only the transition. And I think the reason why we have a negative view on death is because, like, if we look at it in the way of how we live, we say, I still have a lot to experience. I still have to travel the world. I still have to make a lot of money. I still have to, get a nice job. I have so many things I need to do. I didn't experience them, so I have to live my life. That's our view on the world. But what is Rasulullah telling us in this saying that I recited to you? وَمَا إِنَّمَا خُلِقْتُمْ لِلْبَقَاءِ لَا لِلْفَنَاءِ. You were not created except to have an everlasting life. For baqa, la lil-fana. You're not created to be ended. What does that mean? It means that death is not the end. What does it say in the Quran? كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. It doesn't say kullu nafsin za'iqatul fana. It says kullu nafsin za'iqatul maut. Means that maut is not the end. Death is not the end. After death there is the real and everlasting life. So now if we look at the akhirah, it's said if that some of the sinners when they go into akhirah, they will say, I wish I died sooner. They say, I wish I died sooner. Like a lot of the sinners when they go into akhirah, they say, I wish I died sooner. Why? They say that because if they died sooner, then they would have to give less hisab for the sins that they did. And the Arafah, one of our teachers used to say, the only people who would say, oh Allah, give me more life, were the people who used their life to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they would strive for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this brings me to my next point. We have to make an effort to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, in the battle, there was a lot of tough time in the battle of Rasulullah. What was the toughest battle of Rasulullah? There was the battle of Badr. There was the battle of Uhud. Which one is the toughest one? And there was a third battle. It actually has a whole surah named on that battle. Which battle was that? That was the toughest battle for the Muslimin. That battle was the battle of Khandaq. And it's called Ahzab in the Quran. So the battle of Ahzab was the toughest battle for all the Muslimin. And it says in the Quran, it says that the believers were shaken. They were shaking because that's how scary the time was. Ahzab, it comes from Hizb, because the Quraysh, they tried to kill Rasulullah in Badr. They failed. They tried to kill them in Uhud. They failed. They could not take away the Muslimin. So what happened then? They allied with the Jews. And there was three tribes of the Jews. There was the Bani Qunayqa, Qaynuqa, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza. There was three tribes. Two of them in Medina, Rasulullah had banished those Yahudi tribes. Those Jewish tribes, Rasulullah had banished them. Why? Because they were harassing the people. They were harassing the Muslim women. Kind of like if you see like they were doing so many things. It says in the narrations that there was a woman, a Muslim woman who was sitting. They put like nails in her clothes so that when she got up, her clothes ripped and she was exposed. So this was something that the Rasulullah was dealing with, kind of like what you see with the IDF nowadays. Rasulullah already was dealing with that before. This is something that they were facing. So now, Rasulullah, he banished them. He banished 2 of those tribes, not because he was anti-Semitic or anything, but because they broke the peace treaty. So he sent them away. These people, they met with Abu Jahl. And then they met with Abu Jahl, they said, hey, you failed in Badr, you failed in Uhud, let's take him out in another battle. Let's join forces. And then Abu Jahl, he's like, you know what, aren't you guys similar? Aren't the Jews similar to the Muslims? Don't you have like, aren't you Ahl al-Kitab? He's like, yeah, we're Ahl al-Kitab, but we're different. And then it's actually in the Quran. Abu Jahl asks him, who are more on the haqq? Who are more right? Are we the pagans of Quraysh or Muhammad and his religion? And he says, you, the pagans of Quraysh, are better. So then Allah, He actually criticizes them in the Quran. So now, they come together and they join forces. That's why it's called Al-Ahzab. It's the allied forces against the Muslims. In Badr, there were 1,000 enemies. In Uhud, there were 3,000. In Al-Ahzab, in Khandaq, there were 10,000 people, enemies fighting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa. So then what did Rasulullah do? Him or Salman al-Farsi, they told him to build a trench. So they built a big trench. And what's important is that Rasulullah himself was there and he was digging in the trench. It wasn't, he was giving orders and telling them that's it. No, he himself was down there digging the trench. So we have to put our efforts. And you know, it was a time of famine and drought. They used to tie stones on their stomach to make them feel like their stomach was full because they were so hungry, they were so thirsty, but still they were working to build that trench. And Rasulullah, he says, he had like a saying, it's actually in the movie too, if you saw it, is La aisha illa aisha al-akhirah, Allahumma arham al-ansara wal-muhajira. So every time he was digging, all of the companions, they were reciting this. So that, you know, they were reminded that this life is nothing. The last, we're doing it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So now, this is what he was showing the people, that you have to put in the effort. And in this dunya, in the short period that we are here, Allah sent this Anbiya and the A'imma for this one purpose. And they want to establish this one purpose, and that is to remove the zalim. All of the prophets, they did one thing in their lifetime. They fought the zalimeen. And a very famous saying, when we talk about Imam al-Hujjah, when he comes and what he's going to do. All of the A'immah, they have, it's a common saying. It says, يَمْلَأُ الْأَرْضَ قِسْطًا وَعَدْلًا كَمَا مُلِعَتْ ظُلْمًا وَجَوْرًا. When Imam Zaman, he comes, when Imam al-Hujjah, he comes, he will fill this earth with justice and balance, just as it was filled with dhulm and jawr. Please another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So the thing I want to bring to your attention, you know what Imam Zaman, when he comes, it's not going to be like he comes and there's Yawm al-Qiyamah. When he comes, he's going to establish a period of adl. It's going to be years and years. And in that period of adl, there's going to be no one who's going to be poor. No one is going to be needing any money. No one is going to be hungry. Everybody's going to have food. In fact, giving sadaqah would be very hard, because there's going to be no one left to give sadaqah to. So then, this is the time when everything is with adl, and we focus on what? We focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now imagine, you guys are here, there's no mortgages, no loans. You want a car, you got it. You want a house, you got it. No interest. When you have none of those things that are corrupting society, then you're focusing on what? On the ubudiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my main message is this as I end, is that, you know, brothers and sisters, we get busy in this world that is a world not of adl right now. If we ask ourselves, is this a world of adl or a world of dhulm? Currently we're living in a world of dhulm. We get stuck with our jobs, we get stuck with making finances, we get stuck with paying off loans and getting involved in all of that. So much so that we may lose track when Imam Zamana comes and he wants us to sacrifice things. We might not be able to do it, we're stuck in the system. So we have to make time to connect with Abu Abdullah and connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Please another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'd like to bring it to a close, inshallah. You know, when Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was in the battle, we talked about the battle of Ahzab and the battle of Khandaq. It's said that when Umar ibn Abd, when he crossed the trench and he came, and he says, he's challenging them, who wants to go to Jannah? I will send you to Jannah. Who would want to make that effort? Who would want to fight? Nobody. They didn't raise their heads. They all had their heads down. Only Ali ibn Abi Talib, he raised his head. And then he went. And he went with such passion. Rasulullah, he was saying, he says, بَرَزَ الْإِيمَانَ كُلِّ عَلَى كُفْرِ كُلِّ. Because this is a man who's ready to sacrifice anything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he did not kill Amr ibn Abdawad in the first go, as I mentioned. Amr ibn Abdawad, he spat on him, he got off. And then he fought again, and then he killed him a second time. When asked, why did you kill him the first time around? It's because I got angry. I didn't want to do anything in my anger. I wanted only to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the examples of people. This is why Rasulullah says, ضَرْبَةُ عَلِيٍّ يَوْمِ الْخَنْدَقِ أَفْضَلُ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ الثَّقَلَيْنِ. It's because even in the time of war, even in the time of anger, it's not about winning or losing. It's about pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we see this in the time of Imam al-Hussein. When Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyah, his army, he came and they stopped. You know that Hur ibn Yazid's army was very thirsty. They didn't have water. So Imam al-Hussein, he gave them water. Because he had gathered a lot of water in his army. And the Banu Umayyah, their technique, they used to stop the water for their enemies. But Hussein's method, he always give water. He had the choice to not give them water. He had all the water that he could have needed till the 10th of Muharram. He gave water to an army of 1,000. Hur's army was 1,000 men, but he had all the water to give him. And he gave him his water. Even though it was his enemy, that is the way of Hussein. So this is, even in the time of strife, Imam Hussein is only looking to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibna Rasulullah. Ya laytana kunna ma'akum sadati فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. When the commanders of Yazid's army were talking about battle, some of them said this is a very easy battle. There's only 72 of them and some of his family. We can kill them. And their commanders were having a discussion. And then until one of them, they said no. There's one man on the side of Aba Abdullah that if he fights us, our right flank will not know itself from the left flank. And that was Abbas ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. And Shimr, he thinks that maybe I can have him switch sides. He goes to him, he says, "Oh sons of my relative," he calls out Abbas. Hussein says, "Ajibhu, wa in kana fasiq." Talk to him even though he's a fasiq. And Shimr says, "I've come to give you amnesty. I don't want to see you killed. You are from my family." Abu Fadl Abbas, you know what he says? He says, "La'anak Allah wa la'ana al-iman." Curse you and curse this peace that you're offering me. And he says, "Atu'amminuni wa ibn Rasulillahi la amana lah." You're offering me amnesty and not the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. So the loyalty of Abbas, it has no bounds. And but on the day of Ashura, Abu Fadl Abbas, he asked the permission to fight Aba Abdullah. He begins to plead with his brother. He says, "Ya ibn Rasulillah, laqad dha'a sadri min ha'ula'i al-munafiqeen." My heart is aching in me. please give me permission to fight against the munafiqeen. Imam al-Hussein, he refuses. He says, I cannot allow you to fight. And Abbas, he says, your children are crying, al-atash, al-atash. Please allow me to get some water from Shatt al-Furat. But Hussein, he cannot refuse. When he was getting water for his children, he gives them permission. Umar ibn Sa'ad has 4,000 soldiers at the river, guarding Furat. Abbas, the son of the line of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he reaches Furat. He lifts the water in his hands and he's so thirsty. He's so thirsty. His heart is burning with thirst, but then he does not drink because he remembers the thirst of Abu Abdullah. But he charges towards the camp of Hussein until one coward, one ashqiya, he hits him on his left hand. He cuts his left hand and then falls on the plains of Karbala. And then on the other side, Abbas, he holds the mashq, he holds the water skin, and he's going towards the camp of Hussein. But then another coward comes and he strikes the right arm of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. But Abbas, he has no arms. It said he still had the water skin, so he's running, he's galloping towards the camps of Hussein. Then they began to throw arrows and stones at him until one arrow, it hits the water skin of Abbas. It hits the water skin and all of the water falls on the plains of Karbala. Abbas has lost all of his hope. He stands there. فَوَقَ الْعَبَّاسِ تَحَيَّرًا. He stops in his tracks. He doesn't know where to go. Arrows are coming down on Abbas. One arrow hits his chest. One arrow hits his eye until one la'een, he comes and he hits a metal rod on the head of Abu al-Fadl. He falls on the face of Karbala. He falls on the sands of Karbala. He never cried out to his brother. He never cried out about Abdullah. Not when his left hand was cut, not when his right hand was cut, but when he is falling towards the sands of Karbala, he cries out, Ya Aba Abdullah. رحم الله من نادى وعباسا وحسينا. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Please raise your hand in a short dua. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم ادخل على أهل القبور السرور. اللهم اغني كل فقير. اللهم اشبع كل جائع. اللهم اكسو كل عريان. اللهم اقضي دين كل مدين. اللهم فرج عن كل مكروب. اللهم رد كل غريب. اللهم فك كل أسير. اللهم اصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين. اللهم اشفي كل مريض. اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك. اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك. اللهم اقضي عنا الدين واغننا من الفقر إنك على كل شيء قدير. رحم الله. اللهم يقرأ الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.